Hello all, welcome to channel Tech Tutorials Learn by Doing. In this channel we post tutorial video of tools and technologies that are being used in IT industry. This tutorial series covers tutorials on Amazon Web Service, also known as AWS. So let's get started. First, we'll have an idea on what are we going to cover in this video series. We'll start off by learning theoretical concept, which is then followed by practical tutorials and then real world project use cases. We'll learn about overview of cloud and its feature, AWS concepts. We'll learn IAM, which is used for defining who can access our cloud resources and what action they can perform on them. We'll learn VPC, which is like a virtual network on premises server and provide us network resources on cloud. We'll also learn about EC2, which is like a server but virtually and on cloud. We'll learn about Lambda for serverless computing. We'll learn about Elastic Beanstalk for easy code deployment. We'll learn S3 for storing our files and archive files. We'll learn about EBS, which is equivalent to disk attached on premises on our machine. And we'll also learn about AWS RDS, which is used for database solution on cloud. And finally, we'll complete our course by learning some practical projects that are being used. Let's have insight on some of the features of cloud. Cloud is on demand, which means that we can provision and start resources when we require. We can also dump and stop these resources when we don't require just by some clicking and by ease. Another feature is pay as we go, which means that we pay only for what we use. On physical infrastructure, we may have a server of 1 TB hard disk and 12 GB RAM, but our requirement is only half of that, which is used for future requirement and future safe side. On cloud, we don't have to do that. We can provision only 512 hard disk server and 6 GB RAM, and we pay only for what we use and later scale up if our business goes off and if server resources goes up. The next thing is high available of services as IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. On IaaS, cloud vendor provides us a virtual machine. We are responsible for installation of OS on it, managing of them, installation of security patches and updates. We are also responsible for installing the software we require to develop our application and management of them. On PaaS, we are provided platform as a service, meaning that we are provided a Java environment or Python environment on which we can code and deploy our application, and we should not be worrying on security patches or security updates or the OS that is being used behind the scene. On SaaS, it provides a software as a service. A common example can be Google Drive or Mail, which we are using on our daily life. So we can take its analogy with pizza delivery. If we make pizza crust and other fillings in our home, it is can be considered as IaaS. If you order pizza crust from market and do other fillings and other toppings ourselves, then it can be considered PaaS. And if you order pizza from online store, then it can be considered as SaaS. The next feature is larger network access, meaning that if I are sitting in Nepal and if I have to explore our business on maybe India or maybe Pakistan or maybe US, then we have to go to that physical location. We have to install their softwares, use those, and consume that, which can be long process, time consuming, and tedious. But on cloud, we can select region where we want to deploy our application and use them by ease. The next feature of the cloud is fault tolerant, high availability, and reliable. The components that are used in cloud are redundant in nature, due to which if there is any failure in the component, then the redundant component provides the service and our business goes on 24/7. The next feature is automatic system. We can create a script for automatic deployment and provisioning of our resources in the cloud. Next feature is rapid scalability and elasticity. In our real world scenario, the traffic on our server varies. We may not be required to provision higher number of server in low traffic period. So what it does is it monitors CPU's threshold, CPU usage, RAM usage threshold, and if that usage is above the threshold, then it automatically provisions new virtual machine, and overall traffic is distributed among those virtual machine. And whenever those matrices, CPU measures and RAM measures or any other metrics that we define goes below the threshold, then the added component is automatically removed from the system. The next feature is security. Cloud vendor is responsible for security of the cloud. It can be security of physical server or electricity or internet usage or any other securities of the cloud. Since AWS is a cloud vendor, the general feature of cloud is applicable to AWS also. AWS provides services like EC2 under AAS, services like Elastic Beanstalk and Amazon RDS under PaaS, services like Amazon SNS and CloudWatch under SaaS. The coverage of AWS is divided into three different types. Region is a geographical location which consists of two or more availability zone. Availability zone in turn consists of data centers. Availability zones are such that the disaster in one availability zone does not affect availability of another availability zone. And as location is used for CDN, we can visualize these components in picture also. The next is IAM. IAM is used to create user, manage 2FA, assign 2FA to the user, reset password of the user if you have forgot the password, assign policy to the user, meaning that giving role or giving authority to user to access certain services or perform certain actions on the given services, assign user to the group and delete user. We can also use AWS to manage group. We can create group with the help of IAM, assign users to the group, assign policy and delete group. Policy is set of rules that are used to define which services user or group can access and what action can they perform on those services. Policy can be customer inline or AWS managed. AWS manages a set of policies that are defined by the AWS, and customer inline policy is policy defined by customer or us. The next is role. Role is used to give access to the particular member or people when they require special permission. They may be used to give permission to auditor to audit our system or any other developers to find the bug and debug our system or to any services for accessing another services. Let's go to VPC. VPC is like a network component in on-premises server. VPC consists of subnets, which can be public subnet or private subnet. If our resources is on private subnet, then it cannot be accessed from internet, where if our resources are on public subnet, then it can be accessible from internet. If we are to access internet from public subnet, then we require internet gateway. And if we require to access internet from private subnet, then we could require NAT gateway. Route table are used to define route within the VPC. Security group is like a firewall which defines incoming traffic rule and outgoing traffic rule, whereas network ACL is like firewall in the network. Let's talk about EC2. EC2 is like a virtual machine on cloud. EC2 can be of different vendor like Amazon, Ubuntu, Red Hat, or Windows. We can choose EC2 machine based on our requirement of number of CPU required, amount of RAM required, and network performances. An AMI image is like a snapshot of EC2 machine. Under Marketplace, we can find different types of EC2 AMI images. Those images consist of pre-installed softwares, and you should not install after deploying those EC2 images. IAM role, user data, storage, security group, and key can be given while launching Amazon EC2 instances. EC2 instances can be reserved, spot, or on demand. Reserved instances are used when you are to make long-term commitment with AWS. This significantly reduces the operating price of Amazon EC2. The next service is AWS Lambda. It is used for serverless computing. AWS Lambda can be triggered based on certain action like while inserting data in S3 bucket. or by event like every day or every evening 5 p.m. It is built only when those AWS Lambda is invoked. We can write code of AWS Lambda in different programming languages like Python, Node.js, Go, and Java. But there are some limitations like the running time of the code is 15 minutes, disk space is 512 MB, deployment package is 50 MB, and payload size is 6 MB. If you are to access other services with the help of Lambda, then provision should be given in IAM roles. Next is Elastic Beanstalk. Elastic Beanstalk is used for easier deployment of our application. Application built with Java, .NET, PHP, Node.js, Python, or any other programming language can be deployed on servers such as Apache or Nginx. We can simply upload our code and it automatically handles deployment from capacity provisioning, load balancing, auto scaling to application health monitoring. We have full access of the AWS resources that are being used by Elastic Beanstalk. It does not cost extra charges, but we are only charged for those services that are used by Elastic Beanstalk. The next is S3. S3 is a storage service that are used to while storing files or objects. The storage limit of file in S3 is 5 TB. When an object or file is stored in the S3, it becomes an object and we can access this object with the help of URL. If I are to store lessly frequent data, then we can store those data in S3 Glacier. The storage charge is less for those services in S3 Glacier, but the fetching time is higher. So a common usage can be used to store a newspaper article that is say 10 years older, which require less access to that. The next service is Amazon Elastic Block Storage. It is like a disk that is attached to our machine on on-premise server. The data is stored as a block, so we have fast read and fast write in Elastic Block Storage. It is used by EC2 Server and Amazon RDS. There are two different types of EBS provided by AWS that are SSD based and SSD based. The data in EBS is preserved even when the server is terminated by us, and we can move that data in another EC2 server and restore that. The next is Amazon RDS. RDS is used for database solution on the cloud. It is the managed services, meaning that we should not worry about the OS that it has been installed or updating the patches, security patches, or backup or encryption. We can just use AWS RDS and AWS automatically handles those tasks for us. RDS provides us database of different vendors like MySQL, MS Server, Oracle, Postgres, MariaDB, and on its own service Aurora. We can specify configuration while launching those servers. We can also create RAID replica of those database which is used to distribute read traffic of the server. And finally, we'll conclude our lab with some projects. Some of the projects can be hosting static website in Amazon S3 service. We can create a AWS Lambda that automatically extract file from S3 in XML format and store it in another S3 in CSV format. We can install database on Amazon EC2 and connect it from client GUI program. We can take back of IPFS and restore it by expanding the volume. So that's for it today, guys. In next tutorial, we'll learn about IAM. We'll see how do we create user, create group, assign policy to a group, and we'll also validate if the policies are working as desired or not. So till then, if you like my video, subscribe to my channel, gives like to it, and hit bell icon for notification of another tutorial. Thank you.